Welcome to Tucker Carlson tonight. Last night, a secretly recorded conversation between President Trump and his now estranged attorney Michael Cohen aired on television. Much of the dialogue in the tape was garbled, but the thrust seemed to be that one of the men on the call had a personal history consistent with what you might expect from a longtime Atlantic City casino owner. Consorting with loose women was a main theme of the conversation. Well, for viewers who had until recently assumed that Donald Trump was a conventional Midwestern evangelical, this must have been a total shock. For everyone else, those of us who've read the New York Post every day for the past 35 years, it was not. But for the professional hysterics in cable land, the Cohen tape was the breakingest possible breaking news. A stop the presses Hindenburg aflame moment. It was unbelievable. Here's a brief selection of the pandemonium from last night. Watch.
We're back now with our breaking news. It's a CNN exclusive, the secret recording between then-candidate Donald Trump and his attorney Michael Cohen.
Michael Cohen's lawyer, Lanny Davis, released a recording tonight.
Breaking news, CNN has exclusively obtained a secret audio recording.
All right, the president is firing back at that audio recording.
The breaking news we're covering tonight, the Cohen-Trump audio recording.
Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump. 500 years after Galileo, the universe has once again been reordered, this time by the American news media. Donald Trump sits at the center of it. Everything is about Trump. Every word he utters is existentially appalling. Every statement he makes is the single greatest moral outrage since the Tuskegee syphilis experiments. In the eyes of Washington, Donald Trump is pure badness, unadulterated 200-proof evil. And this has effects. Because they believe Trump is utterly, entirely bad, the left no longer feels the need to acknowledge nuance of any kind or practice restraint. Just a few years ago, they might have called him a crappy president. Today, they tell us he's a fascist dictator like Mussolini, but of course much worse than Mussolini, because he's not Mussolini, he's Donald Trump.
I believe we're in a lot of trouble here that I've never seen before in my lifetime of any president. And I would like Obama to speak out against it.
What he wants to do is set working people against working people, black working people against white working people.
A president is not a monarch or a dictator, notwithstanding the fact that Donald Trump often fancies himself in that fashion.
That is exactly what you see in authoritarian regimes.
So what happens if you keep talking like this every day for a year and a half? Well, some people will take you seriously. They believe you when they say their country is becoming a dictatorship, and they get angry. Some of them will become violent. At least one might shoot up a congressional baseball game, and who knows what might happen next. Meanwhile, Democratic leaders stand back and watch all of this, mostly hoping the mob doesn't turn on them, as ultimately it will. The Democratic Party is changing very fast, and few know this better than former Connecticut Senator Joe Lieberman. He lost a primary fight during his party's last leftward swing over a decade ago. Now, this week, he wrote a piece begging Democrats not to vote for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She's the Democratic socialist in New York who's almost certain to win a congressional seat this fall. Electing her, Ocasio-Cortez, Lieberman says, would hurt the Congress, hurt the Democratic Party, and hurt America. Senator Joe Lieberman of Connecticut joins us tonight. Senator, thank you for coming on.
Great to be with you, Tucker. Thank you.
So this candidate is being presented and may indeed be the future of the Democratic Party. Her ideas are the cutting edge of progressive politics right now. Why is that bad?
Well, obviously, she's got a right to her ideas, but if her ideas take hold in the Democratic Party, it's not only not the Democratic Party that I joined a long time ago in the inspiration of John F. Kennedy, progressive on social issues domestically, kind of pro-business, pro-growth in terms of economic policy, and a strong foreign policy based on American national interest and values. I mean, she calls herself a democratic socialist. To me, she's more of a socialist than a Democrat. And that's not good for the party that, though it rejected me in Connecticut in 2006, I continue to be a member of, although I'm obviously independent in who I support, including John McCain in 2008. So, you know what really worried me about this after Ocasio-Cortez beat Joe Crowley? During the campaign, she called for the abolition of ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement Section. It made no sense. I can come back to that. But after she won, 3 credible Democratic candidates for president in 2020 embraced the same call. And it's like the old story about Robespierre during the French Revolution. I got to get out in front of the mob. Those are my followers there, you know.
What happened to Robespierre at the end? Do you remember?
It didn't end well for Robespierre.
So that's kind of the question I wanted to ask you. So I think you could have a real debate on all of these issues, but the one that you just highlighted, abolishing ICE, deeply unpopular with the public. It's going to be hard to win a campaign on that issue, and I think on the merits it's a bad idea. I'm sure a lot of leaders in your party feel that way. They agree with you. They're not saying it in public. Where are the adults to say that?
I agree, not enough. I mean, substantively, unless you're against all enforcement of immigration and customs laws, you need an enforcement agency like ICE. These folks are against the Trump administration's immigration policy. They can't make a rational argument against ICE. So where are they? More people should be speaking out. It was kind of interesting that when Ocasio-Cortez beat Crowley, somebody asked Nancy Pelosi about it, and she said that was in one progressive district. It doesn't represent the Democratic Party around the country, which I found heartening, also very practical, because the Democratic Party will not have any chance of retaking the House if the image of the party is Democratic socialist. It just doesn't work. Democrats don't like the idea of socialists in power in America because it's not who we are.
Democrats are more liberal on immigration, obviously. That's fine.
Right.
But you can't find a Democratic office holder who will explain clearly, and I've tried night after night, what exactly our border policy should be. You can't get a vigorous defense of the idea of borders out of a leading Democrat right now. And some of them, like Keith Ellison, are openly saying borders are themselves racist. They're inherently immoral, borders. How do you feel about that as you watch?
Well, that just doesn't go with me anyway. A country, a great thing about America, let me say first, is that from the beginning, we never defined ourselves primarily by our borders, but by our values and the Constitution, Declaration of Independence. But once you say that, you got to have borders. You have to have rules for who can come in and who can't come in. I happen to be generally positive about immigration and what it does and has done for our country and can still do, but not just open the borders and say anybody can come in. That's a country without rules, and we are a country of laws. So that's the kind of policy that's never going to make it in America, even though most Americans, I think, have a generally favorable attitude toward new Americans who are immigrants.
I think that's true. Senator, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Tucker. Good discussion.
Well, always the first casualty of political extremism is humor that is taken out into a field and executed. Ali Stuckey learned that the hard way this week when she released a parody video. She edited the video to make it look like she was interviewing Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Here's part of it.
Do you have any experience that qualifies you for this job?
I was growing up during the Clinton era, and then basically when I was in middle school, 9/11 happened.
Do you have any knowledge whatsoever about how our political system works? Why should voters vote for you?
You vote. It's democratic.
Well, this has been enlightening.
Well, that was a joke. It's not real. The congressional candidate, at whose expense it was made, didn't think it was funny. She complained on Twitter. Now the woman who created it is being attacked as a purveyor of fake news. She is Ali Stuckey, and she joins us tonight. Ali, thank you for coming on. Did you mean
Thanks
this
for having me.
to fool viewers into believing it was news? Was it intended to be seen as a joke?
Of course, it was intended to be seen as a joke. A satire has played a very important part in political dialogue for a long time, and I'm certainly not apologetic for playing a part in that. And this particular tactic that we use, we certainly didn't come up with it ourselves. We have seen comedians since the 1970s and 80s doing similar things. It was never meant to actually deceive, but it was supposed to be very obvious that it was satire. And for the vast majority of people, Tucker, this was obvious. Most people got and appreciated appreciated the joke. But of course, you see the manufactured outrage from people on the left who believe that humor is exclusive to the hilarious people on late night shows and comedic geniuses like Michelle Wolf and Samantha Bee. Apparently, comedians are not, or conservatives are not allowed to tell jokes no matter what. So that's what I learned this week.
Well, I'm not sure anybody's allowed to tell jokes. I mean, let me ask you, and please be honest, when was the last time you heard a liberal laugh? And not sardonically or bitterly or in rage, but actual mirth. Like, I'm amused, ha ha ha. Look at me, I'm carefree. Have you seen that in the last year and a half?
No, you're absolutely right. And the reason why their jokes are exclusive to attacking conservatives and attacking Donald Trump is because it's the only kind of humor that's actually protected. So you can be as mean as you want to against Donald Trump because, you know, he's a bigot, he's a bad person, and everyone who supports him is too. So it's okay to be cruel towards those people. Those jokes are protected. But any joke that might point out the eccentricities of any other group, well, that's off limits. So that's why humor has become exclusive to attacking conservatives, because it's the only kind that will actually allow you to keep your job.
So if you're living without humor, haven't you already lost, and aren't you existing in a prolonged living hell that rots your soul and torments you? And do you take pleasure from that fact?
Right. Well, I think we probably already know that about a lot of Democrats, but especially about socialists. Look, we already know that they lack a basic understanding about economics and geopolitics. It's not that surprising that they also lack an understanding of humor.
Yeah, wisdom begins with humor, I think. Allie, great to see you.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks.